I sat right here in 2020 and I told you guys Dune was in good hands. Well, sometimes I get one right. Hey, what's up, bookworms and couch potatoes? We're back for a movie review today because this one's going to be kind of close to my heart, guys. If you're first time to the channel, huge Dune fan. I've talked about the book and how it has inspired me numerous times on this channel. But today, guys, we're here to talk about the movie, which is Dune Part 2. So getting the finishing parts of the incredible novel, guys. This is something that I feel like I have waited for about 30 years. Read the book in 93. Fell in love with it, and I've just been kind of waiting for it to get the adaptation that it has deserved for this whole time. And I feel like even with part 1, it still felt like, okay, well, still we got unfinished business, so it remains to be seen how this does wrap up. Well, guys, I'm here to tell you it was worth the wait. Now, this is going to be mostly spoiler-free, and what I mean by mostly is I'm going to have to mention like characters' names and stuff like that. So if you don't want to know about people that are in the movie, I guess, hey, you have been warned. But I'm not going to spoil anything for you, and if you've read the book, I think you're going to be fine. Anyways, but we're going to go ahead and dip into it now. I'm talking about what I liked, what I didn't like, and just kind of my overall thoughts for Dune Part 2. Well, what I liked is it's very clear, again, Denis V loves this book because there are certain times where you just completely see dialogue and scenes just ripped straight from the page, where you can tell Denis V is the type of director that would have the paperback in his back pocket and pull it out. Even he has said it many times when he was making Dune Part 1, where he said, what would Frank do? And you can see he is resorting to that Bible more than once to figure out where he should go with the scene. That's very clear. Guys, the sound and the visuals for this are incredible. I mean, this is very much Lord of the Rings for science fiction. If you've been waiting for that spectacle to see and hear on the big screen, the biggest and loudest screen possible, this is the movie for you. Hans Zimmer somehow one-ups the amazing soundtrack he did for Dune Part 1, because I feel like this is even better. And he adds some stuff. Almost got like a little bit of Blade Runner kind of vibe in there as well, with kind of a, I guess you call it the romance theme, if there is a romance theme. I feel like that's just where I remember that actual tune happening in the movie, you know, is during that kiss that you saw in the trailer. But it's it's an impressive soundtrack, and I've already listened to it about a dozen times. Listen to it with earphones in. It really is just amazing. But visual feast, guys. Cinematography in this is just, I can't think of a better word than a spectacle. It's just everything has this humongous sense of scale, and the cinematographer just captures everything. Some stuff just right from my mind's eye. Nothing feels small, and you never once feel like, oh yeah, that clearly that's a model, that's CGI. There are things where like, did they really build this? I can't even tell. So I think that he uses such a good mix of miniatures and practical effects that it just makes everything look so real that when something might be computer generated, you can't even tell. And that's some of the best that I've seen, because there's so many times where like characters doing something, like there's like this huge explosion or something falling down the background. It's like, oh my God, it's like massive. It really does capture the sense of awe I think that you would want for something like this. Scenes I think that are like two senses in the book, and that's talking about some of the action scenes, because yes, guys, this movie has a lot more action than Part 1, and it has a lot more action than the book does, because with Frank, a lot of the stuff, he's very much a Tolkien in that regard, in that, you know, hey, this is two senses, and hey, there was a battle, you know, and he's going to kind of leave that up for you to interpret. Well, Denis does actually put this all on the screen for us to see here. So you get some really cool stuff, like where they're taking down a spice harvester. I'm like, that's like probably something that's about two senses, I think, in the book. And he's really just put it up there for us to kind of see with our eyes and just be like, wow, you know, I really do get this sense of awe kind of watching it. So it's just so beautifully done. The fight choreography, both with the Fedaykin and, of course, the big knife fight that most of us probably know about. Again, if you've watched the trailer, you know that there is a big knife fight in this movie. The choreographed fights are just so damn good. Nothing that looks like, okay, well, yeah, it's, sometimes when you watch like the Star Wars prequels, you're like, cool, the lightsaber fight's cool, but it definitely looks like it's been rehearsed. With this, it's like you believe that these people who are these world-class fighters, it looks amazing. Like they would really be moves that they would be doing. And yeah, that knife fight is some of the best stuff that I've seen. It really was just an amazing, visceral fight. And I think that's going to be kind of like the gold standard, I think, going forward. Anytime you have a knife fight in a movie, is it as good as Dune Part 2? It's going to be like something that people do say. Some of the individual performances, of course, Chalamet's great. I think that Timothy, he's going to be a star, and he's having a great year, because this and Wonka back-to-back, the dude's just cashing checks right now So good for him. I hope he stays away from the superhero movies. Some people consider Dune a superhero movie. I do not. And if they were a big Dune fan, I think you would be just actually kind of insulted if if somebody calls this a superhero movie. But I hope he does kind of stay away from that, because I think that's what's going to kind of differentiate him as kind of a different kind of actor. But I digress. Javier Bardem as Stilgar. He is a damn delight in this movie. Now, he's kind of used almost like the levity, but it's never to a point where it's like, okay, we're just like cracking jokes and stuff. It's just, all the chuckles that happen in this movie, kind of like the smile gurney, I am smiling in part one. Those kind of chuckles, you get them whenever Stilgar does some of this, but it's still very much, Paul's sort of half father figure along with other people in the story. And you see that relationship where, he is such a believer, and he will kind of, bend things around to kind of fit his narrative. And I love the way that it's done this. So it does give a smile on your face, but his performance is just spectacular. He felt like he lost himself a little bit more, because he didn't have such a big role in part one, obviously. He's here for the most of the film this time. Whereas I will say that this film is mostly just Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet. They are dominating the screen time here. But everyone else, when they do have their moments, they do shine. Let's talk about Chani for a second, because I feel like there was a lot of worries about this. Are they going to turn Chani into a girl boss or something like that? Look, Chani in the book is a warrior. Chani in this movie is a warrior. The role is expanded, but it's never to the point where I feel like, this has become her movie or anything like that. No, she has a very important role in this movie, and her role is expanded. But as a big-time fan of the book, I didn't mind anything that they did with Chani in this movie, except for one thing, which I'll get into in the spoiler talk. But I do like the idea of them playing around with the idea that she's a skeptic. And that's something I feel like they do really well with the Fremen in this movie, as opposed to the book, is that not everyone's a believer. You see, they talk about that there's, different, there's northern, there's southern Fremen, things like that, and that they aren't all this, like, just blindly believing all these prophecies and stuff that the Bene Gesserit have been kind of planting over the years. So it really does open up your eyes to some things that feel like, okay, this feels very faithful to source material, but maybe putting some new thought into it that you would have never thought of otherwise. But it's really, really cool the way they do that. Florence Pugh and Christopher Walken as Irulan and the Emperor, respectively. They're both great, but they have very, very small amounts of time here. I think, obviously, you might be seeing Irulan in future movies, whatever, but I was actually I wanted more. It was one of those where it feels like, okay, is there like a director's cut? Because I feel like these two should have had a little bit more, especially the Emperor. And if you're worried about the Walkenisms, now he doesn't do that. People forget this guy's a pro. He's a very good actor. I know we all kind of crack those jokes, but yeah, he has the gravitas to play that role, and he's good in the short amount of time that he is on the screen. Lady Fenring and the Bene Gesserit overall in this movie are just really good. What they're doing with that, and that thing is, they do pull some things where they're kind of setting up some threads for Messiah, and I think that's really cool the way they do it. There's even something, I have not hidden the fact at all that I do not like the Brian Herbert books, and I do not consider them canon, but there is one book I feel like is at least acceptable, and they do kind of pull something of a storyline from that I'll talk about in the spoiler review here very soon. But it's something I feel like is going to be set up for something that I think that they're going to do in Messiah. So we will see. But I got to talk about Austin Butler as Feyd-Rautha. This guy, I think this guy's career is just going to be amazing. I thought he killed it as Elvis, and all the problems of that movie were definitely not his fault. He is electric in this movie. He's so good as Feyd-Rautha, where it's like the point where, like, wow, I wonder how they got a PG-13 rating for this movie, because he's right there ready to push this movie into an R rating. He is so sadistic and so evil that he makes the Baron look kind of nice. He is really good, and you can tell this guy put in the work for his action sequences, because, man, they are really, really good. And Giedi Prime just overall is just excellent. A lot of people were like, why are they doing the black and white thing? Well, you'll see. It's really well done. So, like when they're indoors, it's kind of color, and then they kind of have the outdoor gladiator scene, and everything's black and white. You kind of see. Again, we'll talk about that more in the spoiler review, but really, really cool. That whole segment is awesome. And I will tell you, I was concerned because we were past the halfway point. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to have some pacing issues because we haven't even introduced Feyd-Rautha yet. And then the movie just kind of like stops, and for 25, 30 minutes, you just go to Giedi Prime, and it's amazing. It might be the best section of the movie. So good, so good. And I never really felt like, okay, I wish we'd gotten ℕ𝕬𝕣𝕠𝕜 sooner, because I was actually saying I think we should have got ℕ𝕬𝕣𝕠 introduced in part one, but the way it's done wouldn't change it. It's just so damn excellent. And again, the performances are just top notch, top notch. I don't want to spoil this, but I'll just say if you're a book fan, there's a showdown that we've always dreamed about seeing. Think you're going to be happy, because there are some things that are changed from this, but sometimes changes can be for the better, and this is one of them that I am actually in support of. But yeah, all the setups, like I said, for Dune Messiah, I'm really on board for it. I don't see any way we don't get that movie now, because I feel like this is going to make more than part one. It's going to win a ton of awards, especially on the technical side. And I think Denis will finally get his Best Director nod for this movie. So I think we're going to get Dune Messiah now. I'm not even worried about that. So I'm glad that they actually did set those up. And it kind of makes this feel almost like that Empire Strikes Back in that way, is that you set up those threads. Maybe not quite as dark of an ending, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a happy ending. But you'll see. You'll see. What did I not like? Now, guys, I'm going to admit this is me nitpicking as a book fan. If you are not a big fan of this book, or you haven't even read it, or you just don't consider it sacred text like I do, these things might not bother you. But I'm going to say, yeah, there's major changes to some characters, mainly Aaliyah. Aaliyah is the biggest change in this story. I feel like I'm never going to pretend that I'm happy about the change that they decided to do with Aaliyah. But I feel like I can accept it for the story that they're telling. I understand. I mean, I feel like these are things you could do in 1984. I have no idea why you can't do them in 2024. But I understand why they went that way. It does actually speed up this a little bit, so you don't have to have a Dune Part 3 just to tell this book's story. So I understand it. Man, I really wish I could have seen what he would have done for it if he had done it just like the book. Thufir, MIA. Thufir is not even in the movie, and that's kind of sad. It's one of those things where you look at it and say, yeah, does a movie work without him? Sure. But I do think that book fans will be missing Thufir quite a bit. Then there's another unnamed character, and I say unnamed because I can't say the character's name without it being a spoiler. But again, I implore you to wait for our spoiler review that we got coming after opening weekend, and we'll talk about really that third character that I'm talking about that is just completely missing from this movie, and why I think they did it. And that one's a no-brainer. I understand kind of why they did that, but I do wish they'd kind of left it in. Even if it didn't show it, I wish they would have left it in, because it does kind of make the Harkonnens even more evil than they already are. But I get why they didn't do it. So some of these changes, though, they really impact the third act for me. Now, look, there's some great stuff in that third act, but there were things where I was kind of starting to cross my arms a little bit. But I feel like overall, guys, it's still an amazing movie, so it doesn't bother me too much. But even at 3 hours, almost 3 hours, still feel like the movie was a little rushed. Now, my wife, not a reader of the book, and she told me the same thing. She feels like some characters kind of got rushed, and she didn't feel anything for some of these characters because there wasn't enough time to develop them. And that's just going to happen in a movie. You don't have as much time. So I always said I felt like this would have been better as a long-form series, but I don't feel like we would have got the budget that a movie like this does require, so I understand. Don't really care for the cliffhanger kind of spot that it ended on. Now look, the original book, kind of a cliffhanger in a way. It's like it doesn't tell you what these characters do with the rest of their lives, and I always tell people you can treat Dune the book as a standalone if you want to. You're not going to have every plot thread completely cleared up. You aren't going to know everything about what happens happily ever after or not. That's fine. But where they choose to end this, I would have much rather it ended with the line that ends the book, and it doesn't. And it kind of has me confused about what the focus is going to be for Messiah. So again, spoiler review is coming very, very soon. But still a couple of spots where I think that the sound could have mixed a lot better. It's one of those things like the soundtrack's amazing. Sometimes it swells just a little too much, and I can't understand some of the dialogue. Now, it was bad in part one. This one, I don't feel like... There was only one time, me and my wife both, there's one line that Paul says to somebody where we both look at each other and say, what did he say? We didn't understand what he said because the music does get so loud in that one spot. But I feel like night and day difference from part one where I felt like, can I have subtitles on the screen, please? I never really feel like that with this movie, except for that one part. But again, much, much better this time around. So again, I just feel like when you got a Hans Zimmer movie, that's just going to happen sometimes. The guy, he likes to have his bombs and his big sounds and stuff. It's just going to happen sometimes. But guys, should you see it? I mean, absolutely. If you didn't care for part one, will this change your mind, though? That's going to be a big question for some people. I feel like there's a chance. Usually I would say, no, if you didn't like part one, this is going to be the one that changed your mind. But I feel if you think that part one was just slow or you didn't really understand, I feel like this is kind of the movie you were waiting for. This one is very much a war film. It is an action film. Movie one is very much the world building, the character introduction. This one, you know all the characters. Now we're going to go boom, 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 boom with the plot. And I never feel like it ever slows down. Had a friend ask, hey, when can I go pee? And I said, before the movie or after the movie? Because I can't think of one time I was looking at my watch this entire movie. Now, that might be me as a book fan, where I just want to hang on to every single fraction of a second. I admit that. But I can't think of anywhere that this movie slowed down. I felt like there were some parts in part one where it slowed down, but this one is just very, very rapidly paced. Even when it's just two characters talking, you're glued to the screen and you don't want to wait. So again, this being more of an action film, I feel like this might be what converts you. So I still say, yeah, I think you should check it out, even if you were just kind of lukewarm to part one. This will probably give you what you were looking for a little bit more. For me, this movie has proven that there is an audience for adult science fiction. And what I mean is, like, if you're one of those Star Wars fans who's just upset that they just can't grow up with the franchise, this is very much what you've been looking for. I've always said that this is Star Wars for adults, and George did borrow heavily from Dune, let's be honest. I think even he would admit that at this point. But yeah, I feel like without that excuse that Disney uses for everything, this is a movie from Space Wizards made for kids. Denny doesn't hold your hand. Frank Herbert doesn't hold your hand. It's a smart, intelligent adult science fiction. And if that's what you're looking for, this is your movie, this is your franchise, this is your book. You need to pick up this book and read it. So see it on the biggest and loudest screen possible. I've had someone ask me why I said that. I think it's just because this is the first time since Lord of the Rings where I feel like this is an event you need to see and hear on an IMAX screen. It was shot specifically for IMAX. That means there's stuff at the top and the bottom of the screen you're not going to see on a regular theater screen. I feel like it's worth it because the spectacle, the atomics scene alone, you need to see this on the big screen because your eyes are going to I'm not even kidding. It is so beautiful. This is some of the most beautiful special effects I've ever seen on the big screen. And again, wrapped around that sound, it's an amazing experience. And I hope you will check it out on an IMAX screen. As for my final thoughts, guys, I was just actually blown away that this has come to fruition. I've been dreaming about this since I was a freshman in high school. I've been dreaming about this movie getting made with the proper respect, faithfully, with a big screen budget, and it's incredible that it's here. So it's like, are there changes? Sure, there's deviations and things like that, and there will be things that will make book fans kind of be like, I don't know why you did that. You're not a better writer than Frank. But it's one of those where I'm like, it feels like it is very faithful, but also somehow modern in a way that there's things where it feels like this is the perfect director at the perfect time. Where technology is advanced enough that we can make this movie and make it look as beautiful and feel as real as Frank's world, And I won't lie, this is the first time for me since being in the theater for Lord of the Rings where I was overcome with emotion, and not because what was on the screen was sad, but because this is something that I had pictured in my head for 30 years. And you're seeing that moment on screen. It's exactly what you always imagined it could be. That's for real. And that's just why I can't say that this is anything short of amazing. And even if you aren't a fan of this book, I think this movie is going to blow your socks off. It really is that good. Just as a science fiction movie fan, I think that you will love this movie. It is an amazing achievement, and it has exceeded every expectation I could have possibly had for it. I knew Denny was such a huge fan of this book. He has always said this was his dream project. I'm glad he got to do it because that was my dream director to make this movie. And I always felt like it was going to be faithfully done, but I didn't think it was going to be done this damn well. So, really my only gripe, guys, is that it couldn't be, 9 hours long. It's one of those things where, you're never, ever going to get it one-for-one adaptation from the book, but I feel like this is about as close as you could get in 2024 to doing a faithful adaptation of this incredible, incredible story that has been stuck in my head for 30 years. So I thank Denny for making this, and I'm just completely floored that it actually got made. And, there was not studio interference that completely shredded it in post or anything like that. It actually came out the way that the director wanted, and I'm happy for that. And as a fan, I am very, very content with what we got, and I think you will be too. So Christopher Ruocchio, the author of Sun Eater, he and I will be doing our spoiler review either March 2nd or 3rd. He's seeing it on opening day here in the States, which is March the first. He didn't get to see it early like me because he's not lucky. We will be talking about either the second or the third, but that will be a full spoiler conversation, so see the movie first. But we'll be doing that this weekend if you guys want to catch that. So guys, have you seen Dune Part 2? Non-spoiler, please, in the comments, let people know if you thought it was a great movie or not. I hope you will go see it. Have you got your tickets? Are you seeing it in IMAX? Guys, drop in the comments and let me know what you think, and I will talk to you there.